Representative Mayor and members of the Health and Human Service Committee. My name is Christy Worcester, and I am the Chief Program Officer at Sweetser. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and a certified clinical supervisor here in the state of Maine. I am here today to testify in support of LD 2125 and to underscore the critical importance of sustaining access to children's residential care services. Sweetser is one of just a handful of organizations that are left standing providing children's residential services, and we currently operate 2 children's residential units, one in Winterport and one in Saco. We serve children and adolescents ages 10 to 17, providing individual, family, and group therapy with a full-time therapist on staff, as well as a supervisor, a part-time nurse, and one BHP professional for every 2 youth. The average length of stay is around 9 months. Currently, 2 beds in each of our units remain unfilled due to the workforce limitations. So that's 4 of the beds in the state are unfilled at this time. The youth we serve have experienced significant trauma reflected in their high ACEs scores. They have typically already attempted outpatient therapy, home and community-based services, and often have had multiple encounters in crisis services, law enforcement, and as you heard, emergency departments and inpatient facilities. When youth first enter our residential treatment, they frequently struggle with boundaries and the behaviors that led to their referral. During the first few months, youth may engage in property destruction and physical aggression, and this period is when both staff and the youth themselves are at the highest and greatest risk of injury. The last 2 years, Sweetser has been forced to close 16 of our 32 residential beds. Both were in 2024. These closures were driven by safety concerns and the inability to maintain adequate staffing levels. Recruitment and retention remain significant challenges. Many staff feel called to the work with children and adolescents, but the reality of a $39,000 annual staff paired with the emotional and physical demands of the job often force them to leave. Staff frequently move to a higher paying, lower stress position in retail or food services, despite feeling a deep commitment to this work. On top of that, it takes approximately 18 months for direct service staff to become fully competent in a residential position. And once they reach that point, they are highly skilled, and youth thrive under their care. Staff retention is directly tied to treatment success. We know that stable, experienced staff develop meaningful relationships with youth, which is essential for effective treatment and positive discharge outcomes. Each week I assess the clinical and operational viability of Sweetser's residential services. There is no question that this service is urgently needed. Both of our units maintain wait lists. However, without the ability to build and sustain a stable workforce capable of meeting the high acuity needs of this population, I cannot assure this committee that Sweetser's remaining 2 units will be open 2 years from now. LD 2125 represents an opportunity to stabilize this critical part of Maine's children's behavioral health system in the short term, while efforts to make these services sustainable long term are underway. Without immediate action, Maine's most vulnerable youth will lose access to the care that they need. Thank you for your time and attention to this matter.
And thank you for being here.
Senator Ingerson, Representative Meyer, and members of the Health and Human Services Committee. My name is John McAniff, and I'm the Chief Financial Officer at Sweetser, a nonprofit behavioral health provider that has served Maine children and families for nearly 200 years. I'm here today in strong support of LD 2125. I want to be very clear about what this bill is responding to because it is not a theoretical problem. Over the past 3 years, Sweetser has experienced operating losses totaling approximately $2.4 million in our children's residential care programs. These losses were not the result of mismanagement or declining demand. They were driven by Maine care reimbursement rates that do not reflect the true cost of 24/7 residential services, rapid wage inflation for a historically underpaid workforce, and rising operating costs across food, utilities, insurance, and regulatory compliance. As a result of these sustained financial losses, Sweetser made the difficult decision to close 2 residential facilities, eliminating 16 beds from Maine's already strained system. These closures were not just balance sheet decisions. They had real human consequences. Children lost access to care close to home. Remaining programs, emergency departments, and families experienced increased pressure. Staff faced unsustainable pressure and burnout as resources tightened. Workforce challenges were a major driver of these losses. Because reimbursement rates did not allow us to remain competitive on wages, turnover increased, staffing shortages became more acute, program stability was compromised, increasing risk to both clients and staff. At a certain point, operating under these conditions becomes unsafe, not just financially unsustainable. LD 2125 recognizes that time is the critical factor. The proposed $1 million stabilization fund is not a long-term solution, but it is an essential stopgap to prevent further irreversible losses. From a financial perspective, this is a prudent investment. We know that the cost of closed residential beds does not disappear. It simply shifts to emergency departments, out-of-state placements, and higher cost systems. Once residential capacity is lost, it is extraordinarily difficult and expensive to rebuild. If LD 2125 does not pass, I am deeply concerned that the remaining handful of providers will be forced to make the same decisions Sweetser already has, meaning fewer in-state residential beds, longer waits for care, more children languishing without proper treatment in emergency departments, and greater overall cost to the state of Maine. Sweetser's experience is not unique. It is emblematic of what is happening across the children's residential care system. LD 2125 will help stop the immediate bleeding. This bill is targeted, responsible, and urgently needed. It gives providers a chance to stabilize while broader reforms, such as the recent addition of this program area to the rate determination schedule. On behalf of the children and families we serve, I respectfully urge this committee to support LD 2125. Thank you for your time, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Welcome. Thank you. Senator Ingerson, Representative Meyer, and members of the Health and Human Services Committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify today, and thank you, Representative McCabe, for sponsoring LD 2125. My name is Jane Van Bramer, and I am President and CEO of Sweetser, and I'm here in strong support of this legislation. Before coming to Sweetser's residential program and special purpose school, one young man felt trapped in a constant cycle of reactivity. He described himself as acting before thinking. His emotions quickly escalated. He viewed the world as a hostile place. He believed adults were out to get him. And when things became hard, his response was to run rather than face the problem. Today, his story is very different. After time in our residential therapeutic setting, he describes himself as being in a much calmer headspace. He learned how to pause, think through his actions, and regulate his emotions. His relationship with adults have also changed. Where there was once fear and mistrust, there's now understanding and connection. Several elements of the residential environment made this possible. Being in a healthy, structured setting allowed him to step away from negative influences and focus on his own growth. Time on our campus farm became grounding for him, especially the bond he formed with one of our horses named Tricky. It helped him feel safe and calm. Working in the mechanic shop gave him purpose and pride, reconnecting him with his roots and providing a positive outlet for his agency. This young person is no longer running away from his future. He's running towards it. Inspired by the care he received, he now hopes to pursue a career in nursing so he can help others the way he was helped. Stories like his show us that residential treatment works, but only if it exists. Maine's children's residential care facility system is in crisis. Over the past year alone, 111 CRCF beds were permanently closed. In April of 2025, 2 licensed CRCF providers closed, reducing in-state capacity by another 33 beds from 185 to just 152. If we fail to stabilize this program, more programs will lose services. Children will wait longer in inappropriate settings, rely more heavily on emergency departments or hospitals, or be sent out of state, all at a higher cost with worse outcomes. An emergency stabilization fund would help prevent additional closures, protect the programs that remain, and give the state time to implement longer-term funding solutions. We appreciate the recent MaineCare decision to prioritize rate setting, but without urgent action, more children like the young person I described today will lose access to care that changes lives. I urge you to act now to stabilize Maine's children's residential care system and ensure that children who need this level of care can receive it at home where they need it most. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Van Vermer.